the marble floors of Rothschild. Tower gleamed under the crystal. Chandeliers as Marcus Williams pushed his cleaning cart through the grand lobby. His worn sneakers squeaked softly against the polished surface, a sound he'd grown used to over the past 3 years. It was 6 a.m. and the building was just beginning to stir with the arrival of its wealthy tenants and high-powered executives. Marcus moved with practiced efficiency, emptying trash bins and wiping down the brass fixtures that probably cost more than his monthly rent. His navy blue uniform was clean but faded, the name tag slightly crooked. At 42, the lines on his face told stories of sleepless nights and endless worry, but his eyes still held a spark of determination that refused to die. He glanced at his watch, 7:30. He needed to finish the lobby before the morning rush really hit. His daughter Emma had a parent-teacher conference at 9, and he'd promised her he wouldn't miss this one. Last month's had slipped through his fingers when Mr. Chen needed the executive floor deep cleaned for an important investor meeting. Emma had said she understood, but Marcus saw the disappointment in her 12-year-old eyes. The elevator dinged, and out stepped Richard Vanderbilt III, flanked by 2 associates in custom-tailored suits. Vanderbilt was a regular fixture in the building, a tech mogul who'd made his billions before 35, and never let anyone forget it. His designer loafers probably cost more than Marcus made in 6 months. Marcus moved his cart to the side, giving them space to pass. He'd learned early on that people like Vanderbilt preferred cleaners to be invisible, present but unnoticed, like the furniture. But today, Vanderbilt stopped, his cold blue eyes fixed on Marcus with an expression of barely concealed contempt. "You," Vanderbilt said, his voice carrying across the lobby. Several people turned to look. "You're the one who cleaned my office last week, aren't you?" Marcus straightened up, meeting his gaze respectfully. "Yes, sir. Tuesday evening. Is there a problem?" Vanderbilt's lips curled into a sneer. "My Mont Blanc pen is missing. Limited edition. Worth $15,000. The lobby had gone quiet now. Marcus felt heat rising to his cheeks, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Vanderbilt, but I didn't take your pen. I never touch personal items on desks. It's against company policy." "Of course you'd say that," Vanderbilt scoffed, loud enough for his voice to bounce off the marble walls. "Only a cleaning staff member, single dad?" He said the words like they were an accusation, a character flaw. Probably desperate for money, raising that kid all alone. "I've seen your type before." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. His hands tightened on the handle of his cleaning cart, knuckles going white. Around them, people had stopped to watch, some with phones already out, recording. Marcus recognized a few faces, regular tenants who'd never bothered to learn his name. "Mr. Vanderbilt," Marcus said, his voice low but firm. "I understand you're upset about your pen, but I didn't take it. You can check the security footage. You can search my locker. I have nothing to hide." Vanderbilt stepped closer, invading Marcus's space. "Security footage? You think you're clever enough to avoid cameras? People like you always think you can get away with things." He turned to address his growing audience. "This is what happens when buildings hire anyone off the street. No background checks, no standards." One of Vanderbilt's associates, a younger man with slicked back hair, chimed in. "Should probably call the police, Richard." "Make an example." Marcus felt his heart hammering in his chest. He thought of Emma, waiting at school, excited to show him her science project. He thought of the stack of bills on his kitchen table, the eviction notice he'd managed to negotiate another week on. He thought of his late wife Sarah, who'd believed he could overcome anything. "I'll call building security," the building manager, Mr. Peterson, said, emerging from his office. He looked uncomfortable, caught between a wealthy tenant and an employee he'd always found reliable. "No need," said a voice from near the elevators. Everyone turned. An elderly woman in an elegant cream suit stepped forward, her white hair pulled back in a neat bun. Marcus recognized her as Mrs. Eleanor Ashworth, one of the building's oldest residents. She lived on the penthouse floor and rarely spoke to anyone. "I was in Mr. Vanderbilt's office on Tuesday evening," Mrs. Ashworth said, her voice clear and authoritative. "I saw exactly what happened to that pen." Vanderbilt's confident expression faltered slightly. "Mrs. Ashworth, I don't see how—" "You knocked it off your desk yourself," she continued, walking closer with the aid of a silver-handled cane. "During your phone call. I watched it roll under your credenza. This young man," she gestured to Marcus, "hadn't even entered your office yet. I'd gone there to discuss the charity gala committee. but you were too busy shouting into your phone to notice me waiting outside your door." The lobby was completely silent now. Vanderbilt's face had turned an interesting shade of red. I don't recall," he stammered. "Of course you don't," Mrs. Ashworth said coolly. "You were too busy yelling at someone about stock prices. The pen is still under your credenza, I'm certain. Perhaps if you spent less time humiliating hardworking people and more time paying attention to your surroundings, you'd know that." She turned to Marcus, her stern expression softening. "I apologize that you had to endure this, Mr. Williams. Some people forget that character isn't measured by bank accounts." Vanderbilt's associates were already edging toward the exit, clearly wanting no part of this anymore. A few people in the crowd were whispering, and Marcus noticed at least 2 phones still recording. I'll check my office," Vanderbilt muttered, his bravado completely deflated. "You do that," Mrs. Ashworth said, "and perhaps consider an apology while you're at it." But Vanderbilt was already striding toward the elevator, his face burning with embarrassment. The crowd began to disperse. The show over, Mr. Peterson clapped Marcus on the shoulder awkwardly before returning to his office. Marcus stood there, still processing what had happened. Mrs. Ashworth remained, studying him with sharp, intelligent eyes. "Thank you," Marcus managed. "You didn't have to do that." "Of course I did," she replied. "I despise bullies, always have. Besides, I've been watching you for months. Mr. Williams, you're here every morning before dawn, and you do your work with dignity. That says more about your character than Mr. Vanderbilt's entire portfolio." She paused, then added, "You have a daughter, I understand?" Marcus nodded, surprised. "Emma, she's 12. And her mother passed away 3 years ago, cancer." Mrs. Ashworth's expression filled with understanding. "I lost my husband 20 years ago. I know something of that pain." "What does Emma want to be when she grows up?" "An engineer," Marcus said, his face lighting up despite everything. "She's brilliant with anything mechanical. Took apart our toaster last week just to see how it worked. Put it back together too, better than before. An engineer needs a good education," Mrs. Ashworth observed. "MIT, perhaps, or Stanford." Marcus's smile faded. "That's the dream. She's got the grades for it. But those schools, the tuition alone." He shook his head. "I'm saving what I can, but it's not enough." "Not nearly enough." Mrs. Ashworth was quiet for a moment, her cane tapping softly against the marble. "Mr. Williams, I sit on the board of the Ashworth Foundation. We provide full scholarships to exceptional students from challenging circumstances. I'd like Emma to apply when the time comes." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Mrs. Ashworth, I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking. I'm offering. But there's a condition." His hope wavered. "What kind of condition?" "I need someone I can trust. My personal assistant retired last month, and I've been managing alone. The position pays $75,000 a year with benefits. The hours would be better than what you have now, though the work would be demanding. I don't tolerate incompetence or laziness." Marcus stared at her, unable to process what he was hearing. "You're offering me a job? Based on what?" "You don't even know me." "I know enough," Mrs. Ashworth said firmly. "I know you show up every day and work hard. I know you're raising a daughter alone and haven't let bitterness consume you. I know you stood up to humiliation with grace. That's more than most people can claim, regardless of their resume." She fixed him with a penetrating look. "The question is, are you willing to learn? The role requires scheduling, correspondence, research, event planning. It's not simple work." "I can learn," Marcus said immediately. "I've been taking online business courses at night after Emma goes to bed. I'm not afraid of hard work, Mrs. Ashworth." She smiled, a rare expression that transformed her austere features. "I didn't think you were. Come to my office at 2 p.m. tomorrow. We'll discuss the details properly. And Mr. Williams, don't be late." "I won't be. I promise." Marcus hesitated, then added, "I have to ask, why are you doing this?" Mrs. Ashworth's eyes grew distant. "My late husband started with nothing. He was a janitor too, actually, at a hospital. Someone gave him a chance once, saw past the uniform to the person underneath. He never forgot that kindness. And neither did I. He built our foundation on the principle that potential exists everywhere, but opportunity does not. Consider this opportunity, Mr. Williams. What you do with it is up to you." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and you should get going. Don't you have a parent-teacher conference at 9? Marcus checked his watch and his eyes widened. "How did you—" "I pay attention, Mr. Williams. It's a useful skill. You'd do well to develop it." With that, she walked away, her cane clicking rhythmically against the floor. Marcus stood alone in the lobby, his cleaning cart forgotten beside him. His hands were shaking, but not from fear or anger anymore. He pulled out his phone and dialed Emma's number. "Dad?" Her voice was anxious. "Are you still coming?" "I'm leaving right now, sweetheart. I'll be there. I promise." "Okay, Dad? You sound weird. Did something happen?" Marcus looked around the grand lobby, at the marble and crystal and brass, at the space where minutes ago he'd been humiliated in front of strangers. He thought about Vanderbilt's sneer, about the words meant to diminish him. But he also thought about Mrs. Ashworth's offer, about Emma's future, about second chances and the kindness of strangers. "Yeah," he said softly. "Something happened. I'll tell you about it later. Right now, I just want to hear about your science project. It's about renewable energy. I built a working model of a wind turbine out of plastic bottles and—" Marcus listened to his daughter's excited chatter as he quickly stowed his cleaning cart in the maintenance closet. He clocked out, grabbed his jacket, and headed for the exit. As he pushed through the revolving door into the morning sunlight, he didn't look back at Rothschild Tower. 6 months later, Marcus sat in Mrs. Ashworth's penthouse office, reviewing the guest list for the Foundation's annual gala. He wore a tailored suit now, though he'd insisted on keeping it modest. The work was challenging, just as Mrs. Ashworth had promised, but he'd thrown himself into it with the same determination he'd brought to every job he'd ever held. Emma was thriving. Her grades had improved even more, and she'd already been accepted into a special STEM program at a prestigious prep school, fully funded by the Ashworth Foundation. She talked constantly about MIT now, about the engineering programs, about the future that had once seemed impossibly distant. Mrs. Ashworth had become more than an employer. She'd become a mentor, teaching Marcus about business, about networking, about navigating the world of wealth and influence. But more than that, she'd taught him that his worth had never been tied to his job title. The story of the confrontation in the lobby had spread, mostly thanks to those phone videos. Vanderbilt had become something of a pariah in certain circles. His behavior held up as an example of everything wrong with unchecked privilege. He'd eventually found his pen exactly where Mrs. Ashworth said it would be, but he'd never apologized. Marcus didn't need him to. Some people would never understand. That dignity wasn't something that could be stripped away by cruel words. "Mr. Williams," Mrs. Ashworth called from her desk. "We need to finalize the scholarship recipients for this year. I'd like your input." Marcus brought over the files, spreading them across her antique desk. Each folder represented a young person with potential, waiting for opportunity. "This one," he said, pulling out an application. "Single mother, working 2 jobs. Daughter with straight A's, reminds me of someone." Mrs. Ashworth looked at him over her reading glasses, a knowing smile playing at her lips. "Does it now?" They worked through the afternoon, changing lives with signatures on letters, offering opportunities to those who'd been told they weren't enough. And Marcus thought about that morning in the lobby, about how Vanderbilt's contempt had been meant to destroy him, but had instead led him here. When Emma arrived after school, bursting into the office with her backpack full of textbooks and her head full of dreams, Marcus pulled her into a hug. She was getting taller now, almost to his shoulder, growing into the brilliant young woman she was meant to be. "How was your day?" he asked. "Amazing. Mr. Chen said my robotics project might qualify for the state competition." "Dad, can you believe it?" "State competition." Marcus looked at his daughter's shining eyes, at Mrs. Ashworth watching them with quiet satisfaction, at the life they were building together. He thought about the long journey from that lobby floor to this penthouse office, about the kindness of a stranger and the cruelty that had, paradoxically, opened doors. "I can believe it," he said, and he meant it. "I can believe anything is possible." Because he'd learned that dignity wasn't something anyone could take from you, that worth wasn't measured in job titles or bank accounts, and that sometimes the worst moments could lead to the best changes. He'd learned that being only a cleaning staff member, single dad, had never been a weakness. It had been the foundation of his strength all along. And in the end, that made all the difference.